Welcome to the Confluence cast presented by Columbus Underground. We are a weekly Columbus-centric podcast focusing on the civics, lifestyle, entertainment, and people of our city. I'm your host, Tim Fulton. This week, as we close out 2023 and prepare to start a new year, whatever it may bring, we are looking back on the highlights, lowlights, and trends that shaped our calendar year. To that end, Walker Evans, Susan Post, and I spent some time discussing the most impactful, interesting, and buzzworthy local stories of the past year. And listen in for an announcement or two during the episode. You can get more information on what we discussed today in the show notes for this episode at theconfluencecast.com. Enjoy the interview. Sitting down here with Walker Evans, the co-founder and editor of Columbus Underground, and Columbus Underground and Metropreneur associate editor Susan Post. How are you guys?
Good. How are you?
Good. We are here talking about, we're rounding up the year basically in news and trends. Not necessarily the best read stories, but just sort of the things that had an impact this year.
Yeah. We kind of started to go back through the year at the end of every year, kind of looking back, and these are the big trends that jumped out at us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
God bless analytics.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk us through, first of all, the North Graveyard, all the stories that happened there. I will point people back to the original episode that we did with Jesse on it.
Yeah.
But sort of how has that developed over time?
Well, the original version was that he approached us and said, "Hey, I want to write about this," and we kind of thought, "Sure, knock yourself out. Like, if somebody reads it, that's great." But this sounds like more something he was going to do for him more than anyone else. And to our surprise, it was very well read.
Very, very well read.
Yeah.
And I think there have been 10 articles now, and there's about to be an 11th.
Yeah.
And Jesse's just done a phenomenal job of coming at it from a lot of different angles and talking to a lot of stakeholders involved in the project, from the archaeologists to the North Market to local Columbus ghost connoisseur Bucky Cutright. So it's been really fascinating to read them as they come in.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the, sometimes I think we do take for granted that people do like learning more about the history of the city, and there's a lot of history there, and he's been really kind of delving into that, sort of category. So it's been great to see.
Fair to say that there's a book coming out of this?
It sounds like
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I think we can save sort of how's that licensing agreement work for the future. It's work for hire, after all.
Yeah.
Next up on our list, the Peninsula. And phase 1 is done after a decade of planning, and there's more to come.
Yeah.
So the Scioto Peninsula, which, if you want to go way, way back, I mean, you can trace it back to the origins of the Franklinton flood wall, which was decided needed to be built like in the 60s or 70s. So it goes back a very long time. But development had been at a moratorium for the majority of Franklinton. That got approved. The city and county decided we have all this land right there all around COSI. Let's do something with it. So a lot of those planning efforts really got underway in like 2012, 2013, and phase 1 opened this year. So we've seen this rash of new development kind of boom, boom, boom throughout the summer. The hotel, the Junto opened, the different bars and stuff inside of that, the office building, the apartments. So yeah, I know Susan's been to quite a few of the openings
Been there
over there.
several times. Yeah, in the
yeah.
Junto, you've got, 3 different kind of food and beverage options. You have the Little West Tavern on the ground floor, Maudine's the coffee shop, and then we have yet another rooftop bar with Brass Eye. It's got good views for Red, White, and Boom.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's exciting to see that filling in, and there's definitely more planned over the next couple of years that should be coming in over there. Like Pins announced they'll be moving their downtown location over there and backfilling the current space with a new concept. So eagerly awaiting to hear more on that.
Yeah, and it's really nice too. It's funny, you hear people say things like, "This feels like Bridge Park." And it's like, well, what you're saying is Bridge Park feels like a city, is what you're saying. Because what's being built there is actually like city development sort of stuff. But it's, narrower roadways, kind of tighter areas. It's more pedestrian centric. It's built right up against the park by COSI. So it feels like really new and exciting over there. And also, I should say, too, with the hotel, there's a couple small retail bays in there that have not come online yet, too. So even in this first phase, they're not even done rolling out what will be happening in those buildings.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be exciting how it kind of bleeds into Franklinton, too, and all the development that's going on at Gravity.
Yeah. And then the Dora is also part of what's coming soon as well, because that will encompass that area as well. So you'll be able to sip a beverage and stroll around and
all through downtown, apparently.
Downtown and Franklinton and all over the place.
Go across the bridges.
Not all of downtown. Not like Discovery District. A lot of that is not in there, but yeah.
Up next on the list, something a little bit less positive that we hope would be East Market. Yeah. For those that aren't familiar, I think that there are folks that are not. Talk through what sort of the intention of East Market was and what has happened with that project over time.
I wouldn't say it's not positive. I would just say anytime you're trying to, build a brand new large scale thing like that, you're going to have some ups and downs. And especially when you're working with food-based businesses, that's a really tough industry to begin with. So, they've certainly had some vendor turnover and things like that. But, I think it just takes time to build things like that up. But to answer your initial question, East Market isn't dissimilar from something like North Market, where you've got a large space that has a number of stalls and different vendors inside. Second floor has some seating area. There's also a couple of kind of in-house bars also. So like I said, they have had some turnover, but they have a whole new slate of vendors that are coming in that I think is going to put them at capacity. And, in talking with Aubrey Stevens, the leasing manager over there, they're making a conscious effort to kind of round things out. They're adding like a healthy food concept. There's burgers and wings now. There's a sandwich spot that's coming in. So I think they are trying to make sure this new wave is maybe a little more accessible for the neighborhood and, has some more healthy options and just kind of round things out a little better. So I'm excited to see, kind of what the new year brings for that space as the newer vendors start coming online. So I'm hopeful. And I mean, you've got some other great restaurants that are surrounding it. You have CBC Beer Hall, Local Cantina. So maybe it hasn't been the smoothest year for that, but I still think it's a great, addition to the neighborhood of taking these buildings that were vacant and now there's something new and exciting there. So I think it's just going to take time.
And do you attribute that, at least some of it, to putting things in there or folks going in there that don't necessarily fit with the neighborhood and that wasn't the best, or just not? What was the problem?
I don't know if there's a specific problem. I mean, I do think it's a little bit of a destination, kind of have to make a conscious effort to go there. But you seem like you were going to add some more to that.
I have some thoughts. Yeah. I mean, I served on the board of directors at the North Market for 6 years.
Yeah.
So I'm very well in tune with there's a discrepancy between what people say they want and what they actually support. So everyone says we want grocery, produce, meat counters, and then what people end up buying is prepared food.
Right.
And, there's this romantic idea of an urban downtown, a city market should be the same thing that it was in 1887.
Right.
And the reality is that you go into your average Kroger, Giant Eagle, Whole Foods, they've leaned more prepared food over the past 20 years because that's where customer trends have gone.
And that's where the margin is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think there's a discrepancy between what people say they want out of a market and what they actually will get. Because at the end of the day, it's really tough to make money on produce, especially as a small operator. You're never going to sell apples cheaper than what Kroger can.
Right. So, and at the end of the day, folks speak with their dollars.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't think it's been negative. I know there's been some turnover, and so you're always going to have people online complaining about stuff. But I think it's really become a neighborhood asset with the opening this year of CBC and Local Cantina, and kind of rounding out the sort of the pedestrian areas over there.
That footprint. Yeah.
And Leisure Club, and then the co-working space is coming online next year. So
and I mean, there are a couple of vendors in the market that have expanded within the market since they've been there. Koso opened Little Cat, and then also the Taste of Greece in Morocco street food. They're involved in the new burger spot. So I mean, Bearded Baker has expanded several times since they've been in there. So some of them seem to be doing really well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next on the list, and again, we're in no particular order, but 10th anniversaries for Columbus Underground.
Yes.
Round of applause, certainly, for Susan Post, 10 years here, Brent Warren.
Also, Marion Bowers-Abbott, our food critic, and Hope Madden, our movie critic, both came on 10 years ago. I say this every once in a while. I don't think a lot of people know, but they both came to us from the other paper.
Oh.
So the other paper closed 10 years ago. January of 2013.
Been that long.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they basically the very next week they just transitioned over and continued working with us.
Okay.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah, some big.
Well, Susan, first, congrats. I think I did it on
Thank
another
you.
episode.
Thank you so
but
much. Yeah. I can't believe it's been 10 years. It's gone very fast, but it's been great. It's been a lot of fun, and I've had the opportunity to do a lot of stuff over 10 years, and I really enjoy it. So
Yeah.
it's been a good time to get to work around all of these other great folks that have been around for a long time. So it's cool to get to work with people that are really passionate and knowledgeable about what they're writing about. So
Yeah. And a little bit more into sort of the business of Columbus Underground. We have here on the list TikTok. We're on TikTok.
Yes.
How's that been?
Whether we want to be or not. Well, we've had a TikTok account for a couple of years. Like anytime any new platform launches, the first thing you do is get in there and claim your username before
Right.
somebody else does. Which is why we have a Truth Social account, just to have our name on there so nobody else has it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. I
Fun
don't think we have
fact.
any followers. Don't post anything on there. But
Okay.
just so no one else
Claim that name.
takes our name and post bad things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we never really used TikTok much. We had a great video editing intern this summer. Shout out to Corey for all of his help with that. But we started posting some videos on there, seeing what people engage with, and what turned out to be really popular with these silly, long lost but not completely gone food destinations with our friend Jesse Yost, friend of the show. And yeah, so the couple of big ones we've done collectively, 2.5 million views.
Okay.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's nothing to sneeze at.
No. Yeah, I'd call that viral, like on a local or regional
Yeah.
level. But the Ponderosa visit was very well
I want to go to
received.
Ponderosa so bad now.
Yeah, there's only one left in Central Ohio on South High Street. So
Okay.
we went down there. We went to the York Steakhouse out on the west side. That was very well watched. We went to Rack's down in Lancaster. There's only a handful of Rack's left.
Yeah.
We went to Arthur Treacher's. There's only 2 of those left. That's up just outside of Akron, like Cuyahoga Falls.
Okay.
Not quite as well viewed and more recent, but we went to Quiznos. There's only 2 Quiznos left in the entire state.
Okay.
There used to be like 30 in Central Ohio.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Quiznos on every corner. There's one on the Cap. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Was there really?
In the short north, yeah.
Oh, my
Oh,
God.
There was a Quiznos and I think a Cold Stone Creamery.
I feel like I
for
remember
like
the
a
Cold
bit.
Stone. Or maybe
Yeah.
that was in the Gateway.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, there's only 2 Quiznos left in Ohio, and we went to one, and people have feelings about these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Big
that's
ones.
that's a testament to engagement, right?
Yeah.
And like you don't necessarily know how things are going to turn out. I will take this opportunity to give a little plug that the Confluence cast is now on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's available. We were just having a discussion beforehand about like, hey, audio listeners seem a little soft right now, but like the video views are way up.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
you basically sort of put content wherever you think folks are going to be, and sometimes you don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And sometimes it takes that like 60-second YouTube short to get someone's attention, and they realize like, oh, this is a podcast, and I can get it on iTunes, and so or Apple. I guess iTunes isn't really a thing anymore. I still call it iTunes, just like Twitter and X. But yeah, so you never know how you get people's attention.
Yeah.
Suck them in.
Do you want to talk about, so we were talking also about your social media philosophy and how like it takes a lot of time to post this stuff, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you
yeah.
have sort of made the decision, and I think that this will be revealing a bit, that Columbus Underground, while it will retain its username, is not going to be posting on Twitter that much.
Yeah. We've been kind of going back and forth with it all year. It's gotten to be a really bad place under Elon Musk, partly because of his leadership decisions and partly because of the things that he says himself on there. But also the engagement is down. The amount of traffic it drives to our website is down. It's, and it has been on that trajectory even before him. So it's really become a time sink that we don't really see a lot of value in.
Well, and other news outlets, specifically NPR, have pointed out, like, we didn't lose any traffic, or if we did, it was minimal.
Yeah.
So, up next, Walker, you've been diving deep into sort of like shopping malls and retail specifically, and the rise and fall of Eastland, Westland, Can we talk through that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, and again, there's a great podcast interview with Doug Motes about Eastland, which that kind of kicked the news off because that closed right at the tail end of 2022. So there was a lot of discussion about what's going to happen next with Eastland. The city's still trying to figure that out. That'll probably move faster than Westland because Eastland was located within the city of Columbus, whereas Westland was located in Franklin Township. So they've never had really the money, the budget, the political push maybe to get that site demolished, redeveloped,
taken care of.
Yeah. But they did acquire funding from the state of Ohio, so demolition, I think it's begun. I haven't driven out there in a minute.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So the big question I had, the beginning of the year was, well, that makes Tuttle now our oldest mall, and it's only 26 years old, but it's starting to kind of falter. And so we've done some more investigating into that, and that's been a very well-read ongoing story throughout the course of the year.
Yeah. And just before we started this podcast, found out a couple more stores are closing within Tuttle. So, yeah. And I can't remember the last time I've been there, which I guess kind of
it's
says
a
it all.
testament, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people don't even realize, too, that the most recent owner, Simon, walked away from the mall. Basically just said
it was in receivership.
Let it go to receivership.
Yeah. So it was, and that was maybe like April of 2020, if I'm remembering correctly. So right at the start of the pandemic, they just kind of walked away from it. So it's been court,
controlled,
without an owner for the past 3 years. And there was a court-appointed management company just kind of keeping the lights on. So they're not real. It doesn't seem like they're actively recruiting new tenants. They're just sort of like barely sweeping the floors, which isn't good.
Well, and it recently
sold. So they did finally find an owner after almost 3 years, I think, of not having an owner. And I don't think they're mall operators. The three ownership companies, they're more just like financial ownership arrangement. So
it's private equity.
Yeah. So we'll see.
I've rolled my eyes at it a couple of times. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know much about them, but generally speaking, that doesn't bode well for the future of something that needs dedicated mall ownership and management.
Yeah. And I'm curious, I guess this is a good opportunity to bring it up. Like, folks don't tend to comment a whole lot anymore, right? Like they do on Facebook and stuff like that. Frankly, they do on YouTube, I'm discovering. But we don't, and the things that, like, at least the podcast, I will readily admit the 8 of the top 10 podcasts are about development.
Yeah.
And it's always like, oh, I want to know. And I don't have a good sense, and maybe you do, about why that is. About why, like, a local celebrity done good, or an artist, or frankly, even just like a business or history does well, but not as well.
Yeah.
Why you think development stories kind of pop off like that?
I mean, I think they represent like massive changes in a city, for better or worse. I mean, some people see it and they're like, oh, gentrification, traffic, affordability, and some people see it as like, oh, this decrepit, land or building or area is being reborn, and that's exciting. So I think
something new is going up and you want to know what it is.
Yeah,
you're curious.
Yeah.
Or do you think, sorry, this is a yes and, that it basically helps people feel like they're in the know? Like, oh, I know what's going in there, or I know what's happening there.
Yeah.
I know where the latest sheets will be. Not that you guys do that kind of reporting.
Yeah.
But that kind of reporting does exist.
Yeah. And I've kind of boiled this down to some extent. Like when we look analytically at our best read stories on Columbus Underground, it's development and food.
Okay.
But we do spend a lot of time writing about, the arts and, local
Civics
theater and civics and stuff. But at the end of the day, human beings need to live, well, they should live in a house and consume food.
Yep.
You don't have to buy a piece of art every day. You don't have to go see the ballet every day. You don't have to, like all of that sort of stuff kind of falls by the wayside. But the things that are kind of like human essentials rise to the top.
Well, I think that's an argument for more food podcasts. So
there we go.
There you go.
Yeah. Let's do
and now that we're on video, we can do it live.
Yeah.
Up next, the elections. We interviewed every city council candidate. We interviewed the 2 mayoral candidates that were on the ballot. We pushed them all out over the course of 4 weeks, and it was a lot.
Yeah, and you say we, but you did 90% of the work. So, yeah.
fair.
I'm giving you props.
Kudos
I
to you,
appreciate
Tim.
it.
Yeah,
It was a
yeah,
goal,
yeah.
and we got it done. I would like to think of it as my art project for the year.
Yeah. I'm not sure if any other media outlet in town did that extensive of a job covering the elections.
I don't. I mean, the Dispatch certainly did their thing, and I
Yeah.
think they did their questionnaire, or at least put it out there.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, that was kind of a trip, right? To
Yeah.
get like every single one of them. And yeah, I had to send a couple follow-up emails.
Sure.
But every single one of them came
Yeah.
in, sat down right here, and
Gave us
did
their
it.
They gave us their time.
And so props to them. Thanks to them for doing that. Certainly. And it helped sort of relaunch the Confluence cast this year. And those were the first episodes that were on YouTube. So it's good. I'm
Yeah.
glad we did it.
It was a fun process.
I'm glad we did it. Up next on the list, I have here just planning in general. So this is basically maybe structural planning. This is Link Us, which we just did an episode about, Amtrak, Zone In, Vision Zero, Rapid 5, all of that, everything seems to be moving forward.
Yeah. I don't think I even had on the list here the downtown development plan update from 2022 was also so I mean lots of it's very like nerdy technical stuff but like highly important, and so it was cool to see updates like all year long on all this stuff.
A lot of future shaping things, I would say.
As someone who follows this stuff pretty closely, we can talk to Brent more about like.
Oh, sure, yeah,
he's the real. He's the real.
We'll do a
OG.
follow-up episode just with Brent.
Yes.
Yeah.
At least in your perspective, and Susan, I want you to weigh in here too. Is it first of all, I think I know the answer to this. Is enough being done? And two, is the work that's being done well?
I think it depends upon which plan we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're different groups and they all overlap. They all have to interconnect. I think there's a lot of really good, important stuff being done with Link Us. I think everyone seems very positive that we will hear some positive news about Amtrak. I mean, we can plan all day
Any
long
day
for
now.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe even after, before this podcast comes out. But that relies upon the federal government to get back to us on that. So that some of that's out of our control. I think there have been a couple missed opportunities with this, not Zone In, Vision Zero.
Okay.
It's supposed to be about reducing pedestrian deaths. There are a couple instances of where we're tearing down buildings to widen roads so traffic can continue to go fast. And I think that runs
Very
180 degrees counter with that.
Yeah.
And I think to some degree it's the left hand, right hand doesn't know what each other's doing across like city departments and stuff. So I think they have to continue to work to rein some of that in to really make a difference. And then with Zone In, it's kind of divided into this two-part, a phase 1 and a phase 2. Purely personally speaking, I think it should be going faster. I think we should just have one phase and get it all done right away.
Okay.
I understand why we're doing it that way, but it's one of those like it's going to become a problem really quick. Like housing is already becoming unaffordable. It's going to get worse if we don't move fast, and I'd love to see us move faster.
And as someone that's not as well versed in this stuff, I would say I see a lot of planning, and I'm excited to see more action in the coming years. And I feel like a lot of people forget that all of this stuff takes a lot of time and a lot of planning and a lot of money, and it's not just going to happen overnight. And can certainly get like frustrated waiting for it, but excited to see how some of these bigger things come together in the long run.
Yeah. A great example of that is the downtown development plan, summer of 2022, when this stuff was announced. A lot of that has to do with just updating infrastructure. And so a good example of that is turning more one-way streets into two-way streets, which we've done some of. Gay Street right down below is a great example, which was like 17 years ago we did that. Fast forward a full year to summer of 2023, and the city says, okay, the first one we're going to do is this chunk of front street from
and
Broad
Marconi
to
also.
Hickory and a piece of Marconi.
Okay.
Because there's a couple of blocks where like it's one way for just a few blocks. It's two ways on both sides. There's really no reason it needs to be one way. So they announced this is what we're going to do
And
first.
it's 3 or 4 lanes already, right?
Exactly, yeah. We're almost in December and it still hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
So like, is the first thing going to be done in 2024 from the 2022 plan? Does it really take 2 years to like turn 3 blocks of a street from two-way to one? It feels like it's going at a snail's pace. And so I think people feel those frustrations sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pivoting a lot.
Yes.
You identified very early in the year, and you were sort of like getting in my ear about it, and I was like, yeah, sure. Talking about comedy.
Yeah.
And like, you were like, I think what I heard, and I don't think this is what you said, is what I heard. It's actually really good.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. And like you encouraged me to come out to some shows, and you've gotten a couple folks to come out to a couple of shows, and a lot more coverage on Columbus Underground. And I feel like, in addition to CU, I am hearing a lot more about comedy and sort of, I guess, why the focus, and is there something actually different, or are we just realizing now that it's burgeoning?
I think there's a couple of things that are different. I think there's sort of the pent-up demand. People spent a lot of time locked in during the pandemic. People want to get out and do things again. So there's that. The social media platforms trending toward short-form video has been kind of a godsend for comedians who can post like 30-second, 1-minute clips. It's great for stand-up to be elevated onto those spaces in a way that it wasn't before. And that's TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, Facebook Stories, all of that stuff. But also, the level that, groups like The Attic opening, hashtag just opened their space, which is improv, but they also do some stand-up events. The Don't Tell group that runs those events in the city, like really knocking it out of the park. There is a little bit of a local, anomaly going on as well, and all these things are sort of starting to gel in a way that I just think it's really cool to see.
And do you happen to have plans for next year for how like you want to insert yourself or Columbus Underground into that scene?
I mean, there'll be like an
I didn't get prior authorization to bring this up.
January, we'll be announcing some stuff.
Oh.
I guess this could be a little tidbit for those listening to the podcast. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Columbus Underground does some event production.
Yeah.
We do, our largest event is the Columbus Coffee Festival, which we just did our 8th year. 8,500 people in attendance over 2 days, so it's become a pretty big thing. And so we're always thinking about what is Columbus missing? We don't want to just do another beer festival because there's plenty of those. Comedy festival seems like a good idea. And so we're talking with everyone from, the Funny Bone at Easton to The Attic to Don't Tell to the improv groups, Shadowbox, Nest, about what that will look like for next year. So
Great.
More details to come, but yeah, we really just want to like put our arms around everyone and get everyone on board and make sure everyone gets uplifted.
Good. Next up on our list, Cameron Mitchell and the stuff that organization has been doing.
Yes.
Susan, if you want to speak to what's
Busier.
happening. Yeah.
Busier.
Yeah.
So, Cameron Mitchell opened 2 new restaurants in Central Ohio this year. Valentina's out at Bridge Park, which to me is kind of like a cross between Marcella's and Martini. Maybe.
Okay.
And then Cento in German Village, which is definitely kind of swinging for the fences, a little more upscale. So those open pretty close to each other. And then they have 2 more restaurants announced for Central Ohio. There's Butcher and Rose, which is going to go in the Preston Center downtown. So it's going to be a steakhouse. Looking like it's going to be pretty impressive. They've done a ton of work on that building.
And I'm sorry, what is the Preston Center?
It's the PNC Plaza.
The new plaza. Okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be, I think, some sort of glass enclosure situation. And then they're also working on a Mediterranean concept at Easton. And there's been a little bit of to-do about this because the building permit's listed as Del Mar.
Okay.
And they haven't confirmed that that's what it's going to be, but the Del Mar in Florida is more Mediterranean. So
than the one we have here.
Okay.
So someone may rebrand, or it may just be a whole new concept for Columbus.
Yeah. So we'll see. So more on the horizon.
There you go. And then last, at least on our looking back list, demolition and preservation. Some buildings saved, some buildings lost. Maybe this is our in memoriam sort of section of the episode.
Yeah, I mean there are some things like the Ice House building downtown in the warehouse district. We lost a warehouse in the warehouse district, which a lot of people were pretty bummed to learn that building was coming down. But I think it put some attention back into what it takes to save some of those types of properties. Brent has played a great role in kind of helping to shine a light whenever anything is even like a whiff of demolition is starting to happen. A great example of that is the Ohio State University hospital system announced they were going to tear down the Henderson House. I always want to say Harrison House. The Henderson House over there on Taylor Avenue.
Yeah.
Historic, especially within, Black-owned business community. This is historic property. And Brent wrote about, hey, they're considering this, and everyone got pretty irate. And then OSU said, maybe we won't tear that down. Maybe we'll do something else.
Good.
Because they have a lot of land over there. They don't have to tear that building down.
Right.
So some like proactive journalism in that realm has played a nice role. And the kind of the next thing I mentioned earlier this year, but I want to dedicate some more time to it, is the original Spaghetti Warehouse building, which is collapsing in on itself. Right. And if nobody takes any action, it's also probably going to be demolished.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty significant building in Franklinton that could be saved and restored. So it's a never-ending battle, but I think more and more people are paying attention to that sort of stuff.
Wrapping things up today, what are you looking for in addition to whatever the comedy festival sort of turns out to look like? Yeah. What are you looking forward to in 2024?
We have some other events, kind of changing, growing, that sort of stuff. So that's on top of mind, on the horizon. We've been in the process of interviewing to hire some new freelancers.
Great.
Yeah, and a big sort of categorical push behind that is local music coverage.
Yes.
I know we sat down and talked about this a while back. So we want to really kick the year off with kind of focusing on that in a sort of a new way and really shining a spotlight back on that creative part of the community.
Good.
Yeah.
And I will say, at least for the Confluence Cast part, want to, first of all, maintain the consistency that we've had. That's success breeds success in that realm. And also step it up a little bit in terms of, thankfully, you let me use this conference room every Thursday afternoon, but have more folks come in that folks are interested in hearing about. Like, the goal has always been to elevate people and ideas and happenings that people may not know about, but also there's nothing wrong with letting them hear from the folks they want to hear from.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So as always, if folks have ideas, they're welcome to email or comment or reach out. So
cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you guys for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you for listening to the Confluence Cast presented by Columbus Underground. Again, you can get more information on what we discussed today in the show notes for this episode at theconfluencecast.com. Please rate, subscribe, share this episode of the Confluence Cast with your friends, family, contacts, enemies, your favorite reporter. If you're interested in sponsoring the Confluence Cast, get in touch with us. We can be reached by email at info@theconfluencecast.com. Our theme music was composed by Benji Robinson. Our producer is Philip Cogley. I'm your host, Tim Fulton. Have a happy new year.